What made you to think I'm never visiting again after being in someone's home? Story 1. When I was 17, my boyfriend at the time invited me to backyard camp at his friend's house. I knew the friend, he was super chill, so I said yes. Got there, some awesome tents were set up in the yard. Grill was going, there was a giant cooler of drinks, I brought snacks. Everything was pretty awesome. His parents were so nice. His younger siblings came and played games with us. It was great. At one point, I asked to go to the bathroom, so he showed me inside. It was so crawling with roaches, everything looked like it was moving. In my 5 minutes inside, I had to swat them off me every 30 seconds. His parents and siblings were just sitting around like nothing was wrong. My skin crawled for the rest of the night. Needless to say, I never went back. Story 2. I was a sophomore in high school and staying with my friend for a couple of days because we had just had a bad hurricane and the power in our house was out and my friend had power. One night, my friend and I decided we're going to go to the movie theater. We couldn't drive yet, so we asked her dad to take us. The theater was 30 minutes away. He said yes, but her mother was adamant that my father should come pick us up from the theater after it was over. She was very insistent that she wanted my dad to come get us and felt her husband shouldn't have to go out twice. Fair enough, I thought, so I called my dad and asked him if he could pick us up from the movies and bring us back to my friend's house after. Sure, he said, and I told my friend's mom this. My friend was a witness to all of this. She seemed pleased that my dad was coming to pick us up. After the movies, my dad picks us up and takes us back to my friend's house. When we walk in, her mother starts asking where her husband is. My friend is like, I don't know, we just got back from the movies, what do you mean? The mom starts saying that her husband went out to go get us from the movie theater. My friend and I were so puzzled and reminded her that she had wanted my dad to pick us up and told her that he was going to, so he did. She starts flipping out, insisting that that never happened, and screaming at us. She was acting scarily insane. My friend was trying to reason with her, but it was getting nowhere. My friend was so embarrassed and felt so bad, but I knew I had to get out of there. I immediately called my dad and asked him to turn around and come pick me up. Stayed in my own house for another week without any power after that. Better being without power than being around that crazy lady. And I never went over there again. To this day, I still don't get what happened there. Story 3. A work friend invited me over to his house to watch a hockey game, so I said, sure, why not? I bought a 6-pack of beers and he said, sweet. He just put them in his fridge. He proceeded to pour himself scotch, but never asking me I wanted to have a drink. Then he pulled out some leftovers and made himself a dish, and again, he never asked me if I was hungry. Then I just asked for a beer that I had bought, and he said, I guess, but I was going to save them for another time. I left after the game, and it's been really awkward at work. Story 4. There were empty cat food bags all over the floor, and at least 15 cats running around the house all over everything. Okay, friend, we will never be having dinner at your place. It gives me a shiver when I think about it. It was so filthy. She asked me to house sit and stay at her place for a couple of weeks. No. You would never know that this chaos existed in her home. When you see her, she's put together. How this is possible, I have no idea. It's feces, ripped drapes, and things getting knocked over. Story 5. I had a friend in high school, and every time I'd go over to his house, 2 missionaries and a church leader would just randomly pop in to say hello and talk about Mormon stuff. I was always polite till about the 3rd or 4th time they did it, and we started doing lessons. They mentioned the lessons were designed for new believers, and I asked which one of them was a new believer, and they all looked at me. I never went back. Story 6. He told me to just sort of push the pizza carton with a half-eaten pizza onto the floor to make space for me on the couch. There was trash everywhere, and his advice was to just push it to the side with your foot to make a path. He was slovenly to a degree I'd never known had I not visited his apartment. Not a hoarder, mind you. Guy just didn't really clean. At all. Story 7. A thick stench of cat piss so vile and strong that it was more or less pure ammonia. Got a brutal headache. Went outside, vomited, left my friend at the time there with the girl he was trying to get with and her family. The fact that they could just live in that was insane. There was also a woman that I was seeing years ago. She was in between places and living with her pseudo-dad. Went over to hang out and meet her more or less family, and there's just a massive cage in the living room with a huge blue and gold macaw in it. This thing was old, nasty, and fucking loud. It would just scream bloody murder every couple of minutes. I don't know if you've ever heard one in an enclosed space, but their screeching will make your eardrums rattle in your head to the point you can feel them. It was pretty apparent, too, that this bird was not very well taken care of. It just seemed to be screeching as a desperate way to entertain itself. So yeah, between the ungodly noise and the sadness of the neglect, I never went back there. Story 8. The way my wife's stepdad treats everyone. He used to be a big shot at his work. Now he's retired and still think he runs everything. He's rude and not welcoming at all. We had a big fallout with him a while back. It was inevitable to happen, especially when his rudeness started being directed towards our 2-year-old. Story 9. Woofka. I went to check on a friend because I became concerned since he just kind of went poof from our friend group. I know he had a couple of cats. However, once I went inside, whoa boy, the place was an absolute disaster zone, filthy, and the cats? I asked how many he had. He didn't know. Most were feral. All had fleas, and the weird feeling on my legs made me realize if I don't get out of here, I will have them too. It freaked me out. But I got in touch with his family and explained the situation. I went back about a week later. Long pants, more courage. It was better, but still a long way to go. I did the kitchen, if he agreed to completely declutter the living room and gather up all laundry, including bedding. Yikes. I did think, I'm never coming back, but I couldn't in good conscience do that. His mom and brother came and started helping a few days later as well. Not sure what happened to all those cats though, boy howdy, that was a lot of feral cats. Story 10. We drove 11 hours with a newborn baby to my in-laws. It was absolute agony because we had to stop and nurse a lot and she kept crying. We were exhausted. We get there and it's absolutely filthy. Crumbs on every surface, the floor is gross. The dining table is covered in some white powder and they're all just eating on top of it. His sister's family of 5 had moved into his parents' 3-bedroom home a few months prior, so it was a full house. I get hungry a lot breastfeeding, and my husband has to make me something because they're too distracted to remember lunch. He sets down the plate on the dining table and then realizes how dirty it is and cleans it for me. I go to use the restroom and there's black mold everywhere. I've never seen the place this dirty. The next day we got in a huge fight at the hotel because I was so uncomfortable using the restroom there and exposing our newborn to black mold. I think we went to Starbucks for me to use instead and kept the baby outside in the shade mostly. Also, his sister made plans with her friends all weekend and then was sad she didn't get to see the baby. I get that the dirtiness was mental health issues, but I was offended that we traveled all that way and were treated like an afterthought. We agreed we'll never go back. Story 11. I was invited to Thanksgiving dinner at the home of a coworker, Mary. Mary was a little like a mother to me, so I was happy to go. Her husband and his 2 adult sons, Ray and Steve, her adult son Roger, were there as well. During dinner, the family began reminiscing, and the topic of the 2 older boys, Ray and Steve, bullying Roger, came up. There was a little bit of good-natured teasing, but then Mary said, "Oh, and the boys used force Roger to perform fellatio on them." I told their dad, but he just said to let them be. They all just kept eating and passing the cranberry sauce like this was appropriate dinner conversation with a guest at the table. Never went back, never will go back. Story 12. My wife and I were invited to a party by one of her coworkers. She had become good friends with her at work, and they even went to the same gym classes before work. She had this beautiful house with her husband, who was a lawyer. We showed up and the driveway was full, but not a massive party. It was normal for the first hour or so after food was served. We were pulled aside into the study by her coworker that informed us her and her husband are swingers, and this is a swinger party. We were told we didn't have to feel pressured to participate, but we were more than welcome to watch or do our own thing. We immediately left LOL. The coworker just acts completely normal like before. She just doesn't invite my wife and I to any parties anymore. Story 13. My husband had an old high school friend that was living in the area of AZ that we were visiting. My husband insisted we stop by for a visit to see his old friend. We pulled up and this guy had mannequins all over his yard, and not like in an artsy way either. He also had no furniture inside his house and had a brand new shiny grand piano in the kitchen because the rest of the house was full of these giant crystal geodes that were probably worth a fortune and cardboard boxes everywhere. His girlfriend offered us mac and cheese off the stove that was probably there for at least a full day. He had these small scars all over his body and pointed out they were from some magical frog ceremony and explained he was a shaman or something like that. My husband asked about the mannequins and he said, "I pretend they are my ex-wife and use them for target practice," and asked my 10-year-old son if he wanted to shoot at them. This was not in a rural area either with lots of land. This was a regular neighborhood with houses in close proximity. He tried to give us a tortoise when we left. When we declined, he wanted to give us a chicken instead. It was the top strangest experience we'd ever had at someone's house. Story 14. I lived in a caravan park when I was 17 and started seeing another girl who lived there. I went to her parents' van to meet them, and there was hardcore porn all over the walls, while the whole family, including a toddler, watched porn like it was the fucking Lion King. Never went back and stopped seeing her not long after. That was a weird family. Update. Yeah, it was totally CSA. The parents were so creepy. They were all just sitting there like it was a family movie, which I found oddly weirder. I was only young and weirded out and had no idea about reporting stuff. Story 15. I had a friend in 8th grade, and sometimes I'd go to his house after school. He'd insist on playing on his PC the whole time, and I had to sit and watch. No multiplayer games or otherwise social activities. I was bored out of my mind, and after 2 or 3 times, I refused to ever go over there again. I had no spine, though, and would just make excuses instead of refusing and letting him know exactly why. Story 16. Ventured over to a college buddy's place for what was supposed to be an epic game night. As soon as I stepped in, I realized epic was a bit of an exaggeration, unless you include the epic scale of biohazards present. The kitchen looked like a science experiment gone wrong. Mold cultures flourishing in unwashed dishes, and the living room? A veritable obstacle course of laundry mountains and mystery stains. Story 17. Similar but different. I was in a college program that rotates you through various specialties, including home health. Home health means the professional goes and administers services in the client's own home. In less than one day, I learned that it was not for me. The first home was normal. The next several were anything but. Dirt, mattresses on the floor, mice droppings, hoarder-type stuff. And that was a normal part of the whole thing. Everything I saw wasn't enough to be removed, and they had nowhere else to go, or no one else to help them. I did not go into home health. Story 18. I recall visiting a college buddy whose idea of interior design was to use a collection of empty liquor bottles as artistic shelf decorations. It would have been tolerable if it weren't for the fact that the shelves were also his closet, pantry, and occasionally his fridge. There's nothing quite like reaching for a jar of peanuts and knocking over a dusty bottle of cheap vodka that's been serving as a bookend for his cereal boxes. The entire visit felt like an audition for a life-sized game of Jenga. Story 19. I slept over at a new friend's house as a kid. She lived alone with her dad and like 5 cats. The house was not only a mess, moldy, very smelly, and so dirty, but it was also literally falling apart. Couldn't flush the toilet, couldn't close doors properly, stair railing was falling off. There wasn't any counter space to cook, so we ended up just eating crisps for dinner. The living room didn't have any furniture, so we slept at a random mattress just laying there. Oh, and her dad was a beekeeper, so there was jars of honey everywhere, like on every surface available, bathrooms, stairs, bedrooms. He sold it at farmers markets. I noped my way out of there as soon as possible the following morning. I still have a heavy feeling in my gut about the fact that a kid lived in that. Story 20. As a kid, I went for a sleepover at a friend's house. Her grandma made us walk to the gas station and turn in pop bottles and get her more Diet Coke. The grandma ordered a pizza for us, but wouldn't let us drink anything. We were playing outside. It was hot, and I remember greedily drinking water from my hands in the bathroom, being scared I'd get in trouble for drinking. We were only allowed 1 slice of pizza each, and we were playing and decided to eat later. When my friend opened the box after it had been sitting in the kitchen, there were cockroaches crawling all over the pizza. I chose not to eat any, obviously. The friend just flicked the bugs and then ate it standing up. No plate because all the dishes were dirty. And when a piece of cheese fell off, she kicked it to the side on the floor. The whole floor was full of trash, the table covered in garbage. I ended up calling my mom and asking her to come. I told the friend I didn't feel good. My mom and dad were on their way to get a late dinner and let me go with them. I remember getting chocolate milk and downing the whole glass in a few gulps because I was so thirsty. That was a Saturday, I think. The following week at school, the friend told everyone I was a baby and couldn't stay away from my mommy, and people made fun of me for weeks, calling me a loser and a wimp. I didn't retaliate by explaining her home was filthy and infested by bugs. I remember thinking it wasn't her fault that her house was nasty. She was a kid, but she made fun of me for a long time after that. Anyway, she's on meth now and has like 7 kids. Story 21 visited a college buddy at his new place, and he's always been a bit of a tinkerer, DIY guy. Well, he met me at the door, all excited, leading me to his innovation room. Inside, there were jars filled with various colored liquids lining every shelf, an overused soldering station, and the strong, undeniable smell of burnt electronics with a hint of nail polish. But that wasn't the kicker. In the corner was an apparently homemade Tesla coil, wires sprawling like some sort of electro spiderweb, sizzling slightly in the damp air. I changed the subject quickly, not wanting to insult his passion projects. As we left the room, he flicked off the light and I heard a soft zapping noise followed by a flicker of blue light. As I glanced back, a mini lightning bolt arcing to the doorknob. It took everything in me not to bolt right then. His place, his rules, but I made sure to just be really busy whenever he invited me over after that. Not really interested in becoming a first-hand lesson in amateur electrical safety. Story 22. I was a private investigator at the time and I went to this girl's place. We were newly friends. She was going to give me highlights, so we made a night of it. Pizza, ice cream, movie, etc. It was really fun until the next morning she told me how she was awake until late in bed BC she was paranoid that I was investigating her. I told her that if I was investigating her, she wouldn't even know I was a PI. PIs have cover stories. She kept going on about it. This conversation happened while she was highlighting my hair, so I wasn't about to leave mid-bleach. Anyway, I did a soft ghosting and never reached out again.